Hello guys and welcome back to my channel Firewall again. In this video we're going to talk about some key important terms from Azure. So as you can see on my screen, you are seeing a picture of Azure Virtual Network, which is something we call VNET. So VNET is a isolated section in Azure cloud. What do you mean by isolated section? Isolated section means if you have a multiple VNets, one VNet will not cause any interruption to the another VNet. It will be a separate dedicated network. Consider an example. You are working with say company called XYZ, and XYZ have different locations. XYZ have offices in different locations. So one office is in India location, and the another office will be in US location, or another office is in US location. So India location having some address space, IP addresses, which is say 10.0.0.0/16 range, and US location will be having some IP addresses in a range of 172.16.0.0 address space. So these are the separate address spaces. They are not conflicting each other. You will be having a separate subnets here, you'll be having separate subnets here. They are not conflicting to each other. Everything is working smooth, there is no issue at all. So it's like isolated things. So India office having a separate subnet, separate network. US office having some separate network, separate subnets. Okay, there is no same thing we'll be having on both the offices, right? Although in a real world we'll be having a lot of things which is common, but just for the example, understand the isolation, what I'm trying to say here. So basically what I want to say, the VNet is your isolated section in your Azure cloud. Okay, like having your own private data center, completely isolated from other customers. You control everything inside. So consider you will be having, or you are acting as a service provider, and you know what how service provider works. So I would say ISP, service provider, they will be having a separate customers, right? So say customer X, customer Y, customer Z. So this customer's data, this customer's data, this customer's data will not interact to each other, right? Unless I'll give you some permission to do that, right? Otherwise it's all isolated. So VNet act like that. It's completely isolated kind of thing. So you need to understand that first. So VNet, you will be having isolation, you will be having a separate address space, and possible address what we have is 65,536, right? And in this address space you can have a separate subnets, like in a normal networking, on premises, how we can create a different subnet out of one big subnet, right? Something like that you can create on VNet. Like you can see over here as example, subnet A is derived from this big space 10.0.0.0/16. So 10.0.1.0/24 derived from this. Like that, subnet B is derived, subnet C is derived. So whatever the subnets belongs or come out of this space, you can create it and use it for your virtual networks. So virtual network, nothing but a separate dedicated isolated network space what you have in a cloud, and you can use it for your different customers or different things, like your for the branch offices or for different purposes you can use that. So as a key features, it says isolation and security, IP address management, subnet segmentation, connect to on-premise VPNs, control DNS. So something like that. And if I say some real world analogy, it is like buying a piece of land to build your own secure gated community, right? In cloud, that is nothing but your VNets. So what VNet does, it creates your private network space in Azure, isolate your resources from others, allows you to define your own IP ranges, enable segmentation using subnets, provide the foundation for all networking. So I hope you understand what is VNet. Now quickly understand what do you mean by network security groups. Network security group, we also call it as a NSG. Network security group, as a name indicate, it provide you some sort of security, right? As I have mentioned here, it's like a firewall or a network guard who's protecting your VNet traffic, right? But one important thing, what is very crucial here to understand, when I say VNet traffic, it's traffic within that VNet. Okay, so VNet is your isolated space, and network security groups will be protecting whatever inside on that VNet. So take this example. Consider this is a VNet space. Okay, and I will call it like a VNet. And in that VNet you have a or I can say you have a VNet with the address space 10.0.0.0/16, right? And in that VNet you have this address space, and with this address space you have a different subnets. So one I have say 10.0.1.0/24. The another one I have say 10.0.2.0/24. Okay, so what NSG do, it protects communication between these two subnets. Consider this. By default, whatever is in VNet, okay, whatever is in VNet is allowed. Okay, so if I have no NSG configure, no rules configure, I can communicate like this. Okay, but when I create something called NSG, I have a facility to say, okay, don't communicate between these subnets. I can configure the NSG on interface here and interface here, so that the communication between these two subnets not allowed. So that is I can do. Okay, so just keep that in the mind. Consider what NSG is. The NSG is a Azure built-in firewall. Control traffic flow in and out. Act as a filter between network segments. Evaluate rules from top to bottom approach. Okay. Say consider one thing. For example, something is coming from the internet. Okay, is hitting to your VNet, and then it's going towards some internal subnets. Okay, so NSG I can configure here at the subnet here, so that whatever traffic coming from the internet will get blocked or allow. I can have that control. Okay, that is what we can do using NSG. So here on my example, you can understand the same. Consider how NSG rules look like. So it's like, say I have to give the priority, then what is my source. For example, my source is like the traffic is coming from the internet, destination is like anything inside the VNet, and a port which I need to allow is 80 and 443. But same time I am having some priority like 120, but I am blocking the port which is 22. Okay, it's denying. So what happened here, if the say consider user here was trying to access port 80, NSG rule will say 100 is saying okay, it's allowed, so it is allowed. But when some hacker is trying to access port 22, NSG rule 120 says it's blocked, so it will get blocked. So basically what is the NSG means, what NSG do, it's more like acting as a firewall, but it has limitations. Not actually the firewalls like Palo Alto or Checkpoint they do. They NSG don't have those facilities. More like a packet filtering firewall. Okay, so placement of the NSG is like you can attach to the subnet, as I said, protect all resources in the subnet, or attach to the network interface specific to the VMs. You can attach to that as well. Key features is like stateful firewall, remember connections, rule evaluated by priority, as we can see over here. Then default rules block everything. This is the default rule who's denying any traffic. One which is we are explicitly allowing, that is only allowed. And you must explicitly allow needed traffic, that is what I just said. Real world analogy is something like security guard at every doorway checking the ID badges and permission list. Let's see what NSG does. Filter the network traffic using the security rules. Can allow or deny inbound outbound traffics. Provide network level security. Work at layer 3, layer 4 up IP addresses and ports, but not at layer 7. So which actual our next generation firewall does. So I hope you understand what is NSG. Let's quickly see what is ASG, application security groups. So as a name indicate, it's a groups where you can configure VMs which having the same purpose. Logically I would say I have a say some app service, I have say some database service. So whatever the work done by the database VMs or database the servers, those sort of things I can add into say a group named DB. I will add those VMs here. Similarly, whatever the data, whatever the work will be done by the apps, whatever the works done by the VM related to the applications, which will I put into application group. Okay. ASG is a logical grouping for VMs. Group VMs by role or applications. User group name in a NSG rule instead of IP addresses. Management easy and flexible. So use group names in NSG rules instead of the IP addresses. For example, I can create an NSG rule, and instead of the IP addresses, every time I put like 1, 2, 3 different IP addresses, every time I need to if I have say 50 IP addresses, I have to put 50 IP addresses, right? Instead of that, I can create a separate group like we do in other firewalls like that, and in that group I'll put those IP addresses, and only that IP address group we can allow. Something like that we can do, right? So that is nothing but that group is nothing but your NSG. So that what the NSG actually does. But specific talking about NSG is like maybe you heard about terms in microsegmentation in virtual environment. If we have certain VMs configured to doing certain functions like database kind of things, so those VMs will group together and put into one group called say database server groups. So inside that we put all those VMs. Like that in ASG will configure a separate groups, and having a similar functionality we can add those VMs into that group, so that in future when we need to use those VMs, instead of putting them one by one, we entirely add those groups, right? So that is nothing but your ASG. So here let's see the example before the ASG IP base and how to manage. Say allow NSG rule is like allow 10.0.1.4 to 10.0.2.4 and here for example if the IP address got changed, then we need to allow another rule, and something like that in a number of occurrence increase. It's like maintenance nightmare. But what if we use the ASG, the logical base thing, the grouping? Then what happens, we will say separate, one is a web server group, one is app server group, and inside that we'll add those VMs, and whenever needed we'll just have a single rule and we will apply, like allow ASG web, like this communication to this guy, like that. So the key features what we get, it's a logical grouping by the application roles, simplify NSG rule management, dynamic add remove VM without changing rules, right? This is a key thing, and reusable across multiple NSG. So what is this dynamic add remove VM without changing rules? For example, tomorrow the VM IP addresses got changed, we just have to add that into this particular group, or remove from this group, right? Or something like this from this group as well. We don't have to touch these rules, or I would say these rules, right? So that is the advantage. And please see what AZ does. Create logical group for network and interfaces, allow you to use group names in NSG security rules, decouple network security from IP addresses, make security policy application focused, right? I hope you understand what is VNET, what is NSG, what is ASG. We just quickly recap. So VNET, I'll just write it here. So VNET is your isolated network. NSG is your packet filtering firewall. ASG is your groups in that firewall. Okay, so I hope you understand this video and you understand this basic concept and you will utilize in your real work. So thanks for watching this video guys, and have a wonderful day.